On March 16th, 2026, a press release landed that shared that Amplifon was acquiring GN Resound for a deal over $3 billion. What does this mean? What is going to be the impact? How will private practices fare during this transition? Will it change a lot or will it change nothing? That is exactly what I want to talk about in today's episode of the Business of Hearing podcast. If this is your first time joining us, welcome along. And if you're a seasoned listener, it's good to have you back. But in this episode, we're going to dive into probably one of the most juicy topics that we've seen in a couple of years in terms of vertical integration, mass consolidation, and a big player buying a big player. So let's dive into exactly what happened here, because it was a little bit unique, right? I don't think many people saw it coming. Amplifon, one of the biggest retailers in the world of hearing devices, went and bought one of the major hearing aid manufacturers, being GN Resound. Now, I remember when this news came out and there was shock. I watched the Facebook groups blow up. My WhatsApp was going crazy. It was like, okay, look what's happened. Like, who's seen this coming? Who's seen this coming? Who's seen this coming? Yeah, if we paint the picture back, this is not a surprise. And I'll share the context on this. It was, I'm going to get the exact date now just to ensure I've got this absolutely solid. You see, if we go back in time just a little bit, if you looked at what Amplifon were up to, they were acquiring clinics. So 2024, they acquired 85 locations, one big acquisition in January, one big acquisition in April. They were trying to get clinics, retail outlets as fast as they could. And then something unique changed. And I noticed it when I was down this late night rabbit hole. So little productivity hack. One of my favorite things to do is Saturday evening. Kids have gone to bed. Wife goes to bed. I'll crack some lagers. I'll listen to the Smiths. And then I'll just start going down random rabbit holes related to our industry. And I found a press release that Amplifon had shared. And it was an initiation of a share buyback program, which is a little unique and not something that somebody who's on the stock market would typically do. And essentially, I'm going to read it now. It was authorized by shareholders in April 2024, and Amplifon was set to buy back 10% of their shares between June 2024 and October 2025. Essentially, buy back shares within 10% above or below the prior day's closing price. Now, why would they do that? Why would a group like Amplifon go back and rebuy their shares? That's not something you typically see. When you went in the press release, it was to support employee incentives, to potentially distribute back to shareholders, or to use shares as part of an acquisition. Interesting, because 19 days later, they bought 160,000 of their shares back. The value of that was 4.5 million euros in order to do so. And it was interesting to then watch their stock price get lower and lower since they made that announcement. You could almost point on the graph, exactly where they announced it. And they've never been as strong as they were in that moment. It's fell back further and further and further. And it is a smart move if you really look at it, right? Because what they're doing is like, we're going to buy back our shares and then we're going to use them for acquisitions. So we're going to go to a clinic and say, hey, we want to buy your clinic, but we're not going to give you money because that's really expensive for us to borrow and manage. We're going to give you shares that are worth the amount your clinic's owned. And as a result of us buying your clinics plus others, our share price will go up. Therefore, what we're giving you today, let's say it's $1 million, it should hypothetically be worth more and more and more, and 2 million, 3 million. Using shares to buy means the value of the shares go up. And then you just keep recycling that process. Like, really, really smart what they were looking to do. But then since that moment, when they've started to buy back shares more and more and more, and we knew they were doing this up to October 2025, they've been very, very quiet. And I shared with our Inner Circle members, and I've got the date here timestamped, in June 2024, my prediction was they're going to do this to October 2025, then expect them to get very aggressive from an acquisition of clinics perspective. We've not seen that. We've seen hardly any movement, hardly any clinic acquisitions from Amplifon, which led us to the reason of like, what are they doing? Because like, if you look at their model, they have lots of retail clinics, they have a centralized head office, centralized marketing, and then they buy from 4 big manufacturers, right? From WS, Sonova, I'm scrolling with my tiny eyes here. And then GN Resound. They were looking at those 4 manufacturers. That's where they bought from. And our view was they were going to buy more clinics. What they've actually done is gone, actually, we're just going to fix our pipeline of how we supply products here. And we're just going to acquire one of the manufacturers, which is a bit of a genius chess move, because fundamentally they then get more margin growth. They get speed of R&D. They've got ability to bring their pricing down if they decide to, and pretty much outspend everyone else in the market to acquire a patient. And it gives them more and more control if they're doing the research and development, they're manufacturing, and then they're retailing. We've never really seen anything like that at the scale that we're talking about right now. And I think for the first time in our industry, what we're seeing is the biggest David versus Goliath that we've probably ever had. We've had manufacturer-owned chains rock up, right? And they have a role in the market. We've never seen the biggest retailer acquire one of the biggest manufacturers, therefore having solid vertical integration. Like, this is our David versus Goliath moment. And you and me, my friends, we are very much the Davids in this equation. So if that's the situation that's happened, what does it mean? What does it mean in terms of where things are going? What lessons can we learn? What can we observe from other industries that may give us a clue into what's going to happen next? Well, we don't have to guess, right? We can go to nearly every other industry that's had vertical integration similar and watch the trends and patterns that occurred and understand what that's probably going to mean for us as an industry. And I'll take you through a few examples now. A big one was Mars Incorporated to acquire a VCA. So this is all pet stuff, right? So essentially it was a $9.1 billion acquisition. VCA was 800 plus animal hospitals, 60 plus diagnostic labs, and one of the biggest vet chains in North America. Mars was Banfield Pet Hospital. They own Pedigree, Whiskers, many of the big pet food brands. Like, that acquisition's like, we're going to feed the thing, take care of it, and then probably they'll do funeral services as well, right? It's like, we're going to look after the entire process of pets. We're going to consolidate in that industry. So they did that. They went through a massive acquisition. What did we see? Well, the group introduced a standardized pricing model, which put more and more pressure. It drove prices down as an industry and put pressure on the independents. The talent, like the best vets, the best veterinarians, got vacuumed into their model. They could pay more. They could offer signing bonuses. There was less admin working for a big chain than an independent. And then marketing become industrialized and centralized, giving them more and more control. Essentially, the middle of the market got squeezed. The standard veterinarians in your normal town or city become much more difficult for them to play ball. And if I look at the stats here, there was an interesting research paper which was all about the corporatization of veterinary medicine and its impact on independent practices. And we'll pull the source and stick it in the show notes. But it said between 2000 and 2021, results show independent practices are 1.9% more likely to exit after corporate entry, with employment and revenue dropping 5.7 and 6.9% respectively. Like, decline over a long time period where everything else is going up, decline in terms of revenue. And it's not just veterinarians. You look at pharmacy, CVS Health, Walgreens Boots Alliance, acquisition, consolidation, local pharmacies feel the pressure more and more and more. You look at dental, Aspen Dental, Heartland Dental, consolidation. Once again, your standard dental practice in a normal town, more and more pressure. You can look at it in funeral services. You can look at it in eyeglasses. There's no shortage of industries where you see these situations have occurred. There's been big consolidation between the big players in the industry, and the ones that feel it the hardest are the independents that are in a community that are now having to compete with one of these big groups that can outspend them, outmarket them, out-talent them, and have the big national brand that they can shout from the forefront. It's a very, very compromised situation to be in. So if we can learn that from other industries, we know that's what goes on when mass consolidation occurs. What does it mean for us as private practice hearing care clinic owners right now, at a time where we're on the cusp of this, knowing that this Amplifon GN is probably going to be the end of the year if we believe all the R&D and what's the process is going to look like. So puts us in a unique situation, right? And here's where I really look at this, and if I've really got to play this out and look into my crystal ball and follow the trends that we've seen in other industries, If you imagine the hearing care industry as a triangle, and it's split into three. So the biggest chunk, the largest diameter, the largest area of that triangle is the bottom of the market. This is where the Amplifons will be fighting. This is where Costco fights. This is like the big mass market area of the market. This is price focused. People want the widget. This is the big chunk. You then have that middle of the market in the middle of the triangle, and it's slightly less people. It's a narrowing triangle naturally. It's a slightly less people. And in there, that's kind of your middle of the market. That middle of the market it's a hearing care clinic in town who's been around for a couple of decades, mom and pop shop, whatever it may be. They naturally charge more than a Costco would, but really they're still selling similar devices, similar care and service. And of course, there's independents. They'll claim they care more and all that stuff. But as somebody looking at the market, kind of comparable, but one's independent and one's a big chain. And then you've got the top of the triangle. It's a small top. It's a small area in comparison to the mass market, but this is the boutique and unique. These are the ones that are not ever going to compete with a Costco because what they're playing is a completely different game. If if the mass market is McDonald's, this is a unique Japanese steakhouse, whatever it may be, right? It's boutique, it's unique, it's got its audience, and it stands out there. If we look at the hearing care industry right now, I think a lot of it splits into those three, right? You've got the Costco's, the Amplifons fighting at the bottom where the most people are. You then move up a little bit, and you've got the mom and pop shops, you've got the good clinics that have been around a period of time who do okay, but not amazingly. And then you've got the boutique and unique, the ones who go, right, we've solid, clear value proposition. We're for these people. We're unique. We do things in a very different way, which means we're in no way comparable to Costco's, Amplifons, etc. If we look at the trends that we see in other industries, what is almost certainly true is the part that's going to feel the heat of everything that's going on right now with Amplifon's acquisition of GN is the middle of the market. It's going to get squeezed, and it's not going to get squeezed downwards. It's going to get squeezed upwards because as Amplifon roll in, as they put their retail outlet to big manufacturer, they can now outspend a mom and pop shop in order to win a new patient. Their advertising can become more aggressive. Their pricing can become more aggressive. And it's going to get very difficult for somebody who's just a standard hearing care clinic who does things in a traditional way to compete. Because unless you're different, and unless there's big points of difference, the only way you will be valued against an Amplifon is the price. And you are a lot more than them because you have to be, because you can't play the game that they're playing through the economies of scale they naturally hold. So if that middle of the market is going to get squeezed more and more and more, and the practices that currently are constantly having conversations trying to justify their price and value and how they differ to Costco, that's not a nice place to be. And you've got to make a decision. If you're in that area right now and you're watching this, you can't fight downwards. There's no way you're going to be able to fight with an Amplifon or Costco. You're not going to be able to outcompete them, outprice them, etc. Your only option, in my view, and if we look at every other industry that's gone through similar vertical integration, the businesses that now thrive in those areas that are independents, they're not trying to play the game that the Goliaths are playing. They're playing their own game that the Goliaths cannot play. And that is boutique, unique. We have a unique spot. We do things in an interesting way. It's a better level of service. The pricing is significantly more. Like, you're not playing the same game. You've got to play a unique game. So if you're in a situation right now where you're feeling that you could potentially be in that middle of the market, and I'd say some of the key symptoms right now is you have to justify your price more and more. You're having to explain why you versus Costco. Then I'd be looking up. I'd be going, okay, how do we double down on our value proposition? How do we become more boutique and unique? How do we have that story be clear and show the people that want better and expect better that we are the logical option for them locally? How do you do that? Well, look, that's the reason we built an 8-step framework that we've helped over 90 practices to implement, because that is the way that you win in today's market, right? Don't try to out-advertise Goliaths. You've got to out-compete and out-market them by being unique and specific to you. So hopefully that's helpful. I think this is probably one of the most interesting times in the industry we've seen for a long time. We've never seen a vertical integration to this effect, and expect it's going to be rocky. You cannot control what happens. You can only control how you react to it. And looking at boutique and unique is an area that no Amplifon will ever want to touch. But that's an area that you as an independent can excel in, get paid what you're worth, and work with the patients that truly appreciate all that you do. So, yeah, hopefully that's of interest. Hopefully that's helpful. And I will hopefully see you again in a future episode as we dive into another juicy topic.